a heart's gift. I am an old man now, but I remember that night like it was yesterday. Some memories never fade. My son, David, had a happy family. He was a kind man who loved his wife, Emma, and their little daughter, Lily. They lived in a small house in a quiet town. Life was simple and peaceful. Every evening they ate dinner together and talked about their day. One night, after dinner, David stood up. "I need to go out for a little while," he said. Emma smiled. "Come back soon," she told him. He kissed her on the forehead and left. Emma waited. An hour passed. Then 2. She called his phone. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Worry filled her heart. It was not like David to be late. She walked around the house, trying to stay calm. Then the phone rang. Her hands shook as she picked it up. "Is this Emma Williams?" a serious voice asked. "Yes," she said. "This is from City Hospital," the voice continued. "Your husband was in a car accident. You need to come now." Emma's breath stopped for a moment. Her legs felt weak. She grabbed her coat and ran out the door. The night was cold, but she did not feel it. Her heart pounded as she rushed to the hospital. When she arrived, she saw David lying on a hospital bed. His face was pale. Wires and tubes were connected to his body. He looked so weak. Emma wanted to cry, but she held his hand instead. A doctor stood beside her. "Your husband is very sick," he said. "His heart is damaged. He needs a new heart. Without it, he will not live." Emma's world stopped. She looked at David's face. Tears filled her eyes. "I will save you," she whispered. Emma sat by David's bed. She held his hand and did not let go. His fingers were cold. His breathing was slow. The doctor looked at her with sad eyes. "We are looking for a heart," he said, "but it is not easy to find one." Emma nodded. She understood, but time was running out. David was getting weaker. That night, Emma could not sleep. She watched David's face. She remembered their life together, their wedding, their trips, their laughter. She loved him more than anything. Morning came. The doctor returned. "There is still no heart," he said. "I am sorry." Emma took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. She looked at David. Then she made a decision. She called the doctor back. "I want to give my heart to him," she said. The doctor's eyes widened. "That is not possible," he said. "You will not survive." Emma smiled softly. "I know," she said, "but I cannot live without him." Tears filled her eyes, but she did not change her mind. She had made her choice. She would save David. The doctor was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head. "Emma, this is not the way," he said. Emma held David's hand tighter. "He is my life," she whispered. "I cannot let him go." The doctor sighed. "Think about your daughter," he said. "She needs her mother." Tears rolled down Emma's face. She thought about Lily's smile, her little hands, her sweet voice. It hurt her heart, but she also thought about David. She could not imagine life without him. She wiped her tears and looked at the doctor. "Please," she said, "do the surgery." The doctor saw the love in her eyes. He saw her pain. Slowly, he nodded. "I will prepare everything," he said softly. Emma sat beside David for hours. She whispered stories to him. She kissed his forehead. "You must live," she told him, "for Lily." When the nurses came, she stood up. She took one last deep breath. She was ready. She gave David one last look. Then she walked away with the doctors. Emma walked down the long hospital hallway. Her steps were slow, but her heart was steady. She had made her choice. She was ready. Inside the operating room, the doctors prepared for surgery. The bright lights shone above her. The machines beeped softly. A nurse held her hand. "Are you sure?" she asked. Emma smiled weakly. "I have never been more sure," she whispered. Meanwhile, David was still unconscious. He did not know what was happening. He did not know that his wife was giving him the greatest gift of all. In the waiting room, the doctors spoke in low voices. "This is not a normal transplant," one of them said. "It is risky." "But she insists," another replied. "She is doing this for love." The surgery began. The doctors worked carefully. Emma's heart was removed and placed inside David's chest. The machines beeped faster. His body accepted the new heart. He was alive. But Emma's body grew weaker. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing became soft. The nurses held her hands, but they knew the truth. She was slipping away. As she closed her eyes, she whispered her last words, "Take care of Lily and be happy." Then everything went quiet. Emma was gone. David's new heart started to beat stronger. He took his first deep breath. He was alive, but he did not know the cost. David slowly opened his eyes. The room was bright. Machines beeped beside him. He felt different, but he did not know why. A doctor stood next to him. "How do you feel?" he asked. David tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Emma," he whispered. "Where is Emma?" The doctor's face changed. He looked sad. "You need to rest," he said softly. David's heart beat faster. Something was wrong. He tried to sit up, but his body was weak. "Tell me," he said. "Where is my wife?" The doctor sighed. He pulled a chair close to David's bed. "Emma saved your life," he said. David frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor took a deep breath. "She gave you her heart." For a moment, the room was silent. David's mind could not understand. "No," he whispered. Tears filled his eyes. He placed his hand on his chest. His heart was beating, but it was Emma's heart. He shook his head. "This can't be true," he said. "She was just here." The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. "She loved you," he said. "She wanted you to live." David closed his eyes. Pain filled his soul. His wife was gone, and now he was alive because of her sacrifice. Days passed, but David could not stop crying. He sat in his hospital bed, staring at the walls. Emma was gone. His heart, her heart, beat inside his chest, but he felt empty. Lily came to see him. She climbed onto his bed and held his hand. "Where is Mummy?" she asked. David's eyes filled with tears. He pulled Lily close. "Mummy's in heaven," he whispered. Lily looked up at him. "Will she come back?" David shook his head. "No, sweetheart." His voice broke. "But she is always with us." He placed her tiny hand on his chest. She is right here. Lily listened to his heartbeat. Mommy's heart? She asked. David nodded. Yes. Lily closed her eyes and smiled. Then she is not gone, she said. She is still loving us. David held his daughter tightly. In that moment, he understood. Emma had given him more than just her heart. She had given him a second chance to live, to love, to be strong for Lily. From that day, David promised himself one thing. He would not waste the life Emma had given him. He would raise Lily with love. He would be the father she needed, and every time his heart beat, he would remember Emma's love forever.